Hello. Welcome to the best of the web in audio form. Prepare your earholes for the dankest of memes and some good old fashioned story time. AskReddit question submitted by Unjaibungi9383. What did the weird kid in your school do that you'll never forget? Submitted by Aldo the Apache 45. He wrote, in my yearbook, when I was 6 years old, I went into a cornfield. I didn't realize it was a maze. I was stuck for several days without food or water. When they found me, the doctors said I'd never be the same. Good luck in college. Submitted by Maggotlegs 502. Stole a car, crashed it, lost both his legs at 17. A few years later he did it again, but this time he stabbed one of the good Samaritans who tried to help him, and shot at another one. He then led the police on an 8-hour manhunt through tropical jungle by detaching his prosthetics, and hiding under the leaves and mud, and using a makeshift raft, to escape downriver under the cover of nightfall. The newspaper the next day read armed and legless. Submitted by Sarosh Sidva 2. Humped my desk for a solid minute while maintaining eye contact with me, and then said, thanks, and just walked away. I'm a guy. This was 15 years ago, on my first day at this new school, and I was just eating lunch at my desk, and this dude just walked up and went to town. No context, no introduction, nothing. Didn't even buy me dinner first. Just wham, bam, thank you desk. Submitted by my new brain. A few days before a pep assembly, anonymously posted signs all over school that said the cock is coming. Teachers and school administrators were obviously concerned but clueless. Smuggled a live rooster into the assembly, and partway through the opening speech at the assembly, whipped it out over his head as it went apeshit. Entire gym full of kids stood up and started chanting cock, cock, cock. Was not seen at school for a few days after that. Submitted by Abnormal Skittles. She barked at people and tried to scratch behind her ears with her foot. AMD sniffed people's butts at recess. She was 14. Submitted by Duaki. We had a cat girl. She would wear all black and had cat ears, cat gloves, cat collar, and even a fucking cat tail, and she would walk around the hallways meowing at people. If she didn't like you for whatever reason, because she never actually spoke to anyone, she would hiss at you and swat at you until you left, but sometimes she would fucking chase you. She had 2 friends, if I recall correctly, and she would nuzzle into them and purr. She was the only person who acted like this, and she was that way my entire high school years, albeit a year younger than me, and I'm pretty sure she was in the special ed classes. I graduated in 2018, and I often wonder where she is now, and if she's still meowing at strangers. Submitted by Horticorti. He was generally very weird and erratic. One day he extracted a huge slimy bodger out of his nose, turned around to me and a friend, and told us full of glee, guys, look. Then he stuffed it back into his nose. One day I asked him why he was so weird, and he told me with the straightest face, the jester's cap affords one many liberties. So I don't know if he was just weird or a secret genius, maybe a bit of both. Submitted by Cats in Dahood. So, there was a guy at our school, when I was a freshman, that everyone called Wolfman, who was weird in all the bad ways. He claimed to have superpowers, teleportation, DBZ like energy creation and whatnot. All the girls said he'd just stare at them if they had class with him. He hung around us freshmen and did his best to flirt with the girls. For an example of his flirting, he once told a girl that while astral projecting, he saw her face on Jupiter. Needless to say, girls stayed away from him. He graduated though, and his brother started at the school. Now, Wolfman wasn't a tall guy by any stretch of the imagination, maybe 5 feet at most, but his brother was a good foot shorter than him. He looked like he belonged in 3rd grade. He never got any taller. It didn't help that he always wore a child's Goosebumps jacket that made people start calling him Goosebumps. He was even more convinced of his powers than his brother, but at least he was less sexually creepy. But that's all he had going for him. One memorable day I was in math class, and he started shaking violently. People ignored him, so he started flapping his arms around. Wondering if this was an actual seizure, the girl next to him put her hand on him and asked if he's okay. He growled back, "Take your hand off me. This power is too much to contain." She started yelling at him for faking a seizure and he went back to normal death stare forward grumbling about his powers. Submitted by Logical Program. After one of my female friends rejected his advances, he proceeded to jump off of his roof twice and broke both of his arms. Second thing, he made a wooden weed pipe in wood shop and then tried to smoke out of it in class. Another weird kid, who I might mention probably had a cognitive disability, so I don't want to be mean, hid under a bridge in town and drank multiple bottles of Pepto-Bismol and then went to school acting like he was drunk. He attempted to get people to drink some with him and then went back to the bridge and tried to light stuff on fire until the police arrived. Another one, a truly tune of a guy, shortly after high school was caught with a large amount of guns in his trunk, rifles, pistols and all that, and went to prison/jail over a multitude of crimes. Don't even think he was in a gang, just pure insanity drove him to do insane things. Submitted by Jed Adkins. Ended up in a mental institution because his parents bought him a new mattress, and while removing the old one they found multiple mason jars full of blood. No exaggeration, 2 gallons total. There was a police investigation and turned out it was all his blood. His only answer as to why was just in case. Submitted by Gosber. There was this huge guy, tall and wide, in our classes. To support his impressive body, he ate a lot. He'd bring an entire roll of cookies, like 20 plus, and stack them on one side of his desk. Then he would take one bite out of cookie number 1 and put it to the other side of his desk. Then he would take one bite out of the next cookie and place that one on top on cookie number 1. He'd go through the whole stack until all cookies were partially eaten and in an each stack on the other side of his desk. Then would do it again. Take one bite of the top cookie in place that in the original side of the desk, bite the next cookie, etc. After maybe 15 minutes of biting and stacking, the whole lot was gone. Now we weren't even supposed to eat in class, but he always got away with it somehow. Submitted by Stud J Badgel. 7th grade, guy didn't have a pen/pencil for the test and the teacher wouldn't give him one. You need to be prepared, blah. Yeah, the dude took out a paper clip, straightened it out, stabbed himself, and started doing the test using his blood as ink. He was quickly sent to the nurse's office. Submitted by Sycamore. I'm from a small town. There was this weird kid who was a year older, but he was so weird that even the younger kids would pick on him. I didn't really know him, but I put him in the weird but harmless category. He graduates and then decides to rob the local taco time with a shotgun. Well, it is a small town. The kids working at the taco time all know him, and pretty much everybody in the taco time also knows him. He got 2 years. Submitted by Tonfix. The weird kid in our school was part of our friend group, so 15 plus years later we still give him shit about it. During assembly one afternoon, a few weeks from pool or prom, he went up on stage while our entire year was filing into the auditorium and taking our seats. He was part of the A/V club, surprise, so his responsibility was making sure the microphones worked so nobody questioned why he was up there tinkering with the mic. Anyway, 90% of our year has come in at this point when he starts singing Jumper by Third Eye Blind over a karaoke version of the song he found on LimeWire, and he's changed the "my friend" part of the chorus to the name of the girl he wants to ask out to prom. He gets about halfway through the song before one of the teachers realizes it isn't a joke and gets up on stage to drag him out. Everyone is just sitting there going WTF. Half the kids don't know the song and the other half is wondering why he chose it to ask someone out. Turns out the girl he was asking wasn't even in the auditorium yet, so didn't hear his little number. He got detention for a week for being disruptive, but since then we just call him Jumper as a joke, but then it stuck, and I don't think anyone in our friend group has used his name since then. Even during his wedding you could tell who he went to school with, since they'd ask where Jumper or Big J was. Submitted by Crunchy Funans. Guy in Junior High had an unsightly amount of earwax and was obsessed with James Bond, who he claimed to be his uncle. He would loudly proclaim that James Bond will kick your ass to anyone who questioned his affiliation with James Bond, made fun of James Bond in any fashion, or denounced James Bond's skills. He would literally get into fistfights to protect the honor of James Bond. There was also a girl in my elementary school who never wore shoes and was known for her impressive farting skills. I'll never forget the day when our class was sitting on the library floor during a lecture by the librarian. How to handle /read/fold a newspaper. The 90s were weird. It could not have been more boring when all of a sudden out of nowhere the girl unleashed a massive fart that kept going and kept getting louder and louder to the point that the entire class was in full-blown hysterics while the fart continued to rage on. The hero we needed that day. Legend. Submitted by Fleajam. I remember once in high school we were on a school camp which included some low-level spelunking. About 60 of us had to squeeze single file on our hands and knees through a narrow part of the cave which was about 100 meters long. There was a small section about halfway along which opened up a bit to allow 2 people to sit shoulder to shoulder. Anyway, weird kid got to this section and decided he really needed to poop. Not sure what he had been eating, but it was a runny one. He was at the front of the column, so we all had the pleasure of crawling through the mess he made because we'd come too far to turn back. Combine that with poor lighting and poor ventilation, and we had a real mess on our hands. Submitted by Poor Very. We were getting DNA samples in biology. Most of the class used spit, but he tried to squeeze milk out of his nipples. Milk. After that didn't work out, he attempted to get pimple fluid from his pimple. When the teacher noticed and questioned, he answered, "I got some out just this morning." Submitted by Luca de Janeiro. He was a genius, all top scores. One day he called a friend of mine and said, "Hey, what are you doing this afternoon? Do you want to come here so we design a time travel machine?" Who knows when he is now. Submitted by Aspr Dave 70. Went to a large school, 3,000 students. If anyone said anything to the weird kid that he didn't like, he would stare at you and recite your name and address. A little creepy. Submitted by Fewer_Daffodil. This is going to sound ridiculous, but during my senior year of high school someone took a huge, and I mean inhumanly huge, shit in one of the girls' bathroom toilets that was far too big to be flushed away. Some kid mentioned seeing it, and in no time somehow the entire school was made aware and gathered around the bathroom trying to get a look at this monstrosity. Picture 50+ high school kids skipping classes just to try to squeeze into a small women's room to stare in awe at an infamous shit. The crowd got so big and unruly that the administration finally caught on and banned people from that particular hallway for the rest of the day under threat of suspension. I like to believe that all of us were that weird kid on that day. Submitted by Call Cypher's My Hero. During my 6th grade graduation, our class sang a song. Weird kid is standing next to me on stage and suddenly projectile vomits and some of it landed on my shoes. Impressively, he still kept singing while I stood there wide-mouthed in horror and disbelief. I'll never forget all the gasps from the crowd. Submitted by Sam_9786. He said he was Sonic the Hedgehog. When someone asked his name he would say, "I'm Sonic," and run away as fast as he could. He even wrote his name as Sonic on homework and tests. Most people never knew his real name. Submitted by Sharkisucks177. In 4th grade a girl ate a whole mechanical pencil next to me. She also regularly ate whole sheets of paper and erasers. The pencil really sticks out in my mind though. Trans something. Naruto ran everywhere. Told everyone her dad was Harry Potter at age 12, and most memorably, came to school bawling her eyes out because she said she had laid an egg and her parents had eaten it for breakfast. Submitted by Mad's Reddit account. One girl in my grade, at high school, so 4 years from age 12 through 16, cut herself to fill a vial with her own blood and wore it around her neck. Also wore cat ears and a tail to school, and would chase people around meowing and hissing and trying to scratch them. She was freaking fast too, especially when she'd climb upstairs on all fours. Submitted by Viva La France. In high school, he'd hand out business cards to everyone he'd see in the halls that read, "Congratulations, you just met the most interesting man in the multiverse." Eventually we graduated high school and ended up going to college together, and to celebrate this, he bought a unicycle, taught himself to ride it, and proceeded to ride it every single day to class. Submitted by No Peace 303. The weird kid in school bought a house next to me, and I have to deal with him on a daily basis. We are in our 40s now. Also, I thought he was weird when we were 8 years old. I watched him last night wearing a top hat, dancing around a fire with a mannequin. Submitted by It's Mighty in a Box. This was at university, which makes this even weirder. I studied geology, so we went on a lot of field trips. One time we went to Spain and I noticed this rather strange girl had a tally chart in the back of her notebook. Now, this girl was odd. She wore all black clothes that were clearly not washed very well. She had bright ginger hair and would wear huge spiky plastic jewelry that was usually bright orange, like big spiky plastic necklaces or bracelets. She would pick her nose aggressively in class, kind of girl. Anyway, I asked some of the other girls if they knew what the tally in her notebook was about, and they said that she was counting the amount of time she had successfully taken a piss while standing up. I don't know about you, but I found this fascinating. I started casually following her one day on our field trip in Spain, and sure enough, she would find somewhere she thought was discreet. It wasn't discreet. I saw everything. She would take her pants fully off, then take a mean piss standing up, the whole time with a demonic smile on her face. Shit was scary. Then she'd put her pants back on, get out her notebook to add another tally mark, then saunter off into the Spanish wilderness to do more geology. It was almost as disgusting as it was mesmerizing. So, one day we had a day off to relax and do what we wanted. So everyone agreed we would go to Madrid for the day. So we all get on a big coach and set off. The drive is like 2 hours 30 minutes in. She starts mumbling to herself about needing the toilet. Everyone around her going quiet as she became more agitated. Eventually she jumped up and waddled down the aisle to ask the driver to stop. After a bit of arguing and Spanish shouting from the driver, we pull over. The bus doors open. She walks back up the aisle and gets off using the door halfway down the bus. She takes 3 steps away from the door and starts digging a hole like a freaking badger in heat. Now at this point I think deep down I knew what was about to happen. She's about to take a massive piss right here in front of everyone as the ultimate screw you to her classmates she clearly hated. But boy, I was wrong. She finished digging her hole. It was quite impressive given how dry the ground was. She turned herself away from the bus, dropped her trousers, and took a squat over the hole. What is this? I thought. Maybe she's too shy for a stand-up piss. Nope. Out comes the most horrific shit from her pasty white arsehole. Like gallons of it. I've never seen so much. The hole she dug, whilst impressive, was not sufficient for the brown mass that spewed forth. She finished, wiped her ass with a small piece of tissue she had in her pocket, and got back on the bus, with the same maniacal grin I saw her have with the wild piss. Everyone was silent, our professors just staring at each other, clearly thinking what the F just happened. Jim, did that girl seriously just unleash a turd tsunami in front of 40 people? The rest of the journey was just silence. I think we were all in shock. We get to Madrid and everyone slowly gets off the bus. Shit girl starts saying again that she needs a toilet and everyone turns to look at her. Her bright orange trousers are soaking wet, like she'd been swimming. One of the other students said, "Jesus Christ, what the hell happened?" And casually as anything, she turns to him and says the bus ride was too long. I pissed myself a few times. At this point I'm losing my mind. What the F, lady? You stopped the bus so you could decimate the landscape. You couldn't have pissed then. You might as well have. I mean, everyone saw your massive dump. I don't think a quick piss would have bothered anyone. Seriously. Anyway, 2 girls took pity and carted her off to a public toilet. The rest of us went to a few museums and had a great day, but it was hard to enjoy, to be quite honest. Madrid's Natural History Museum didn't have the same jovial atmosphere after watching a grown woman shit and piss herself. Submitted by Athenia H. Okay, so one kid got Ted to put a protractor in his mouth and he did it curved side first, so naturally it then got stuck and he got sent out of class, had to go to the school office. The same kid got dared to shoot a staple gun at himself, so he went ahead and staple gunned his arm and had to be taken to R&D to get stitches. There were loads of other things he did that I can't remember now, but it got to the point that if someone did something totally stupid and or dangerous, kids in our year began to refer to it as pulling a Hudson after him. Submitted by user. Made his own religion. Went through the paperwork and everything for recognition. Honestly, this is better than 98% of other organized religions. Submitted by Transipo. I tore a bit of skin off my finger and I dropped it by accident and couldn't find it. After a while I noticed it's on a pencil case of my classmate that I was sitting with. I was embarrassed to take it from there, so I just stared. And she ate it. Maybe she thought it was her skin. I don't know, and I don't want to know. Submitted by Ruin BRZ. I don't know where to begin. One kid wore a trench coat every day with a ring on every finger and a 6-inch cross necklace. One group wore fursuits most days. One kid stabbed himself regularly for fun. One kid wore a dog collar every day. A lot of shit I can't even explain. I went to a good school that happened to be very accepting of the weird kids, so all of them went to my school. One kid freaked out because a teacher took his phone and he punched a hole in the wall. There were a lot of cat and horse girls. I honestly could go on for days. It's a small town in Washington. A lot of the kids were just your average weird kids, if that makes sense. But since you want more, we also had the only program for special ed kids in town, and they'd let some attend normal classes. One of them named Brandon would smells girls' hair, and if you let him tell you for days about how he wanted to screw his cat and marry it. There was some girl in a wheelchair who had some bone deformation, so she was only like 3 feet tall and like 100 pounds, and all the weird kids would always dated her. 3 to 4 kids who wore clothes that used to be bright colors but had turned brown, one of which it was his choice. He came from a nice house, but he never washed his clothes or showered. He pissed his pants all the time and thought he was a gigolo. Lots of gay dudes that were encouraged to be very flamboyant, like asses hanging out high heels. Teachers had to give them special privileges, stuff like that. The school gave anyone who wanted to be different the ability to do anything they wanted without getting in trouble. A teacher lived in his classroom. That's a whole different story though. The kid with the trench coat looked like he belonged in Blade Runner. Submitted by Gasper the Prince. This one chick did a bunch of weird shit. We went to the same elementary, middle, and high school, but I'm a year above her, so we were never in the same class. Still, the things I've heard and seen her do include talking in a British accent to herself while in the bathroom, trying to have full-on conversations with Siri, then getting bored and just saying things like "but" to her, sitting across from a group of gay kids and mumbling homophobic stuff to herself, trying to flip a desk and having a full breakdown upon realizing desks are heavy and she's a little girl, and run through the halls doing the can with herself. Submitted by Mole7597. Walked around the school cafeteria wearing a monk's robe, chanting the Latin from a comedy sketch in Monty Python's Holy Grail while hitting himself in the head with a textbook. I guess I should also add, he eventually attended Harvard University and won a Pulitzer Prize for drama. Submitted by Baitose2112. He was getting bullied by some asshole. A group of us came over to see what was happening. Instead of sticking up for himself or resort to fighting, he stabbed himself in the hand with a pencil. Bully backed off real quick. Submitted by Popsicle Incorporated. I moved from California to the Southeast in my 8th grade year. Several weeks into that year, the school administration found a loaded gun in some kid's locker. Thank God, he was apprehended before he could use it. I do not know what his motivations were, nor did I know the kid in question. I remember being terrified to go to school for months afterwards, because I thought it might happen again. Submitted by Jimmy Shakabra. The year is 2009. It's my very first day of public school, after being homeschooled for 10 years. I'm starting 10th grade. I wander my way into the cafeteria and sit at a table with my twin brother, who's virtually the only person I know. At this point, I assume that I'm indeed the weird kid. Suddenly, Naruto-Nate, named for the way he did the arms back sprint, and his GF Kitty Gilbert, cat girl, tail, is hissing The works, held hands and jumped from the second floor library balcony all the way down onto a table in the cafeteria. They crashed straight through a folding table, which caused everyone's food to be flung in toward the center. The force of the kids sent food flying far enough to hit other tables, which initiated a real-life food fight. I will never forget the feeling I had right then. I thought, oh my god, public school is just like the movies. Yes. Submitted by Occam lol. He disappeared from school one day, said to be on vacation, and years later we found out what actually happened. Turns out his dad was even weirder. Apparently, the dad had stolen ashes from Auschwitz and made a painting with it, causing huge backlash, and the entire family had to flee to Spain to get away from the police, which we all found out in the news.